like it's still snowing out there. Reminds me, there's a koan in the Zen tradition. One of the lines says, "Every snowflake falls in a different place." That's like very literally true. Every snowflake that ever was, never will be, falls in a different place. You know, you could turn that over too and say that every snowflake falls in exactly the right place, and perhaps you could say that every snowflake falls in the same place. It's all a matter of perspective. So I mentioned at the beginning now our sit and practice. That's really the foundation. If we did nothing else, we've shared our time well by being quiet. You know, the radical art of sitting down and shutting the heck up for 30 minutes. It's not so popular a pastime with many people, but I think maybe it should be more popular. It's for myself. I never emerged from a period of quiet or of meditation and think, well, you know, that's made everything worse, or you know, that was a what a terrible thing to do. It's always just a powerful, um, real powerful solve for the busyness of and the many concerns of the human experience. And if we can really learn that shift, that isn't to learn the shift where we're not disturbed by the content, like the rising and falling of thought, that center, that indistinct center of me, I, that is always thinking and weighing and judging and might be confused or anxious, and the different aspects that are involved in identity, to openly allow self, whatever that is, no idea, whatever, to allow self to just be as it is, and for a period of time to simply welcome and allow things to be as they are. I wanted to bring in a koan, and every week after week I keep bringing up the Book of Equanimity, so I thought I'll switch gears and went and instead looked for something in the Blue Cliff Record, which is another wonderful collection of Zen koans. This is the secrets of the Blue Cliff Record. Excuse me. And yeah, one of probably arguably the key koan collection in the Zen school. It was actually an amalgam of a couple of different koan collections that were already well used. One of the Transmission of the Light, a collection, and another collection of the sayings of Master Unmon. Master Unmon was one of the great luminaries, the 9th century kind of Tang Dynasty China. And one of his successors was responsible for putting this book together, so he had a little bit of bias towards his own lineage and his own teaching family. So there's a lot of Umon koans in the Blue Cliff Record. Unmon, like many teachers, Zen teachers of that period in China, had studied Buddhism as a child, basically, and then as a young person. Excuse me. Let's have a little water, a little catch in my throat. And then, like a lot of those Buddhist practitioners of the time, wasn't quite satisfied with the kind of the orthodox teachings of however that was presented in its time to be a Buddhist monk. He was interested to travel and to inquire with a lot of the Zen teachers of the day who were becoming quite famous, often hidden away in the mountains and difficult to reach, where he could go and where you could go and journey and ask questions. But he had the background. He had a background in Buddhist education, and after a long time, he was actually. It said that he had a deep awakening with a rather bizarre experience, which is one of those classic Zen stories from antiquity, where he's seeking the teachings of Bokushu, who was a teacher who's quite elderly and quite a severe teacher. And Unmon had questions for him, and he went to the door of this Bokushu's hut and asked for knocked on the door, and when Bokushu opened the door and saw him, he just shut the door in his face and wouldn't see him. And this happened. This was not an uncommon way that hermit Zen teachers actively sought to avoid people in that era. I mean, you've made a statement by becoming a hermit in the mountains. Living alone as a hermit in the mountains is a pretty, it's definitely not on Facebook, and just disconnected. And then somebody comes and they're at the door and asking questions. And there's a real strand in Zen Buddhism of only wanting to engage with people who are truly earnest, right? So often the first kind of showing up to ask questions is a turned away. Oh no, we don't do Zen here, or you should go and talk to somebody else. That's as often it was done in that way. I like to share that it's sort of similar here at Yokoji. If I see a car pull up in the parking lot, I usually hide behind the curtains a little bit. Yeah, then in the hopes that they'll run into somebody else, because often the questions will, people just show up and say, "Is this a Zen center?" And it's like, "Yeah," and we go from there. And maybe somebody who has a more advanced practice than myself would just take that as an opportunity every time and show them around. But as you can see, it's snowing, so I'm hiding in the house. Unmon comes to Bokushu, asks him a question, gets the door slammed in his face, comes there, asks him again, door slammed in his face. The next time he goes to slam the door, and it said Unmon put his leg in the door, and he still slammed the door, and he injured his leg. And in great pain, realized, had a deep realization. So this is a sort of an odd path toward an awakening experience. Certainly brings you very present when your mind might be consumed with an intellectual or spiritual question, and then the reality of being in pain, it can be an awakening event. Anyhow, however he becomes more awakened, Unmon, throughout his career, he practices with a couple of different teachers, and eventually becomes a teacher himself in the late Tang Dynasty, just around when China was plunging back into further civil war. A lot of this era was plagued by a lot of upheaval and kingdoms moving around at the end of the Tang Dynasty into the Song Dynasty. Umon he wisely read the writing on the wall and decided it's probably a good time to leave town, leave the leave that area and his patronage, and moved to a monastery high in the mountains and in a more inaccessible area. And it was so inaccessible and high in the mountains that monastery still exists in China. Apparently, you can, as you visit it. I looked it up online. It looks so. Unmon's monastery is still there, and the man himself apparently was still there, they kept his mummified body for centuries, which was a curious practice. But they put the founder of the temple in the founder's room, kind of like, you know, maybe a little bit like sort of in the Egyptian in the Egyptian style. And but it was his mummy, it said, was destroyed in the Cultural Revolution, right? But he lasted until that point. Little biographical information about Unmon. I hope it's at least some of these stories are a little interesting. He left many pivotal koans and sayings behind for Zen students and Dharma practitioners to chew on down the years. Many of them very difficult. I remember Tenshin Roshi saying that he asked Maizumi Roshi, his teacher and the founder of Yokoji, one time. He was trying to pass a koan, and he was frustrated because Maizumi Roshi wouldn't pass him on this koan. He felt like he understood it, and he said Maizumi Roshi got quite upset with him and said, um, "There's no, it's not for me to just pass you on stuff." He said, "You know, my job as a Zen teacher is to throw concrete blocks in your way." Right? So his job was, he saw his job was to put obstructions there in order for him to work through those obstructions to gain a deeper understanding. And one of Unmon's famous koans is "Every day is a good day." Simple line: every day is a good day. He said, "I don't ask you about before the 15th of the month. I don't ask you about after the 15th of the month. What is today?" And no one answered, and he said, "Every day is a good day." In that koan, before the 15th day is kind of like before awakening, after the 15th day, after awakening. Either way, every day is a good day. That's one that sort of always raises the hackles on the back of the hair on the back of my neck a little bit, because in a relative sense, there's good days and bad days. Or if I really look at it, even bad days have some good parts. And even in the best of days, there's some dukkha, there's some difficulty. Right? So it tends to be, in a relative way, there's a mixture of good and bad through the days. Now, in an absolute sense, if you look at each day, then maybe we go beyond good and bad. It's not a matter of good and bad, it's just what it is. Right? We can say that. But he goes a step further and says every day is a good day, fundamentally. I'm still working with that koan. When he was, so he passed away in his late 80s, Unmon, and his final words that are a tribute to him, let me think, are, "Coming and going is continuous. I must be on my way." There's a long tradition of leaving a poem as an epitaph, as your own epitaph in the Zen tradition. That's a nice one of Umon's. "Coming and going is continuous. I must be on my way." Okay, so I should bring in the koan here from Unmon. Unmon said, "Everyone has their own light. Everyone has their own light. But when you look, you don't see it. The darkness is dark, dark. Now, what is your light?" He answered himself, "The kitchen pantry and the main gateway." And then he added, "It's better to have nothing than something good." So, great comment from Uman. Let's get into it, because that's like, both statements are hard to take or hard to fathom. Right? It's better to have nothing than something good. Well, that's the last line. The first one says, "Everyone has their own light." Isn't that? I mean, let's reflect on that now. We can see one another here. Or for those who don't have their cameras on, or maybe joining by phone, maybe you can't see, but we can hear. There's connection, there's experience, there's the sense spheres. Some may be missing sometimes, others more heightened. There's a varied mix of experience and awareness. But everyone has that light. We all are. To say we have it, is already maybe saying, do we have it? Do we have smell and taste and touch and sight and thinking? Do we, if we try and say, okay, well, I have thinking, that's a good example. Try and grasp that. Try and grasp a thought and hold it. It moves. It's like gossamer threads. It disappears, always shifting, right? Coming and going, as Umon said, is continuous. So we can't grasp any of this experience and hold it, or single it out and separate it. And yet that light of awareness that we're experiencing, and say we're experiencing it. Well, we could turn that around and say awareness is experiencing us. Right? We could say that. We could say, well, if I set aside the self, I, me aspect, right? Don't worry, it'll be there. We can get right back to that selfing in just in a minute, right? But if we can just set aside the I, me self, then awareness continues to shine, and we don't have anything to do with having to direct that or conjure that up. Awareness is unfolding and appearing in a multitude of appearances through the sense spheres, through internal and external phenomena. But there's constancy in that unfolding. Everyone has that. Everyone is that. And I'd say broader than everyone, everything. It's like we look at, some of us have it's always nice to have a pet wander through the Zoom screen every now and again, right? But they also have this light, all of these wonderful animals, plants too. And we can go further and say everything has its own light. And what that awareness is, or how far consciousness extends, whether it goes down to the cellular level and beyond, or whether it's something that arises with more complicated organisms, that's a matter for scientists to far smarter than me to kind of work on. I like to listen to their podcasts, but I don't delve into that. I focus on this now, this awareness. Everyone has their own light, Umon says. But when you look, you can't see it. You can't find it. The darkness is dark, or another translation, it is obscure. When you look for this awareness to see what this is, to try and grasp or understand, and we can be through a lens of a koan of like, who am I after all? Like, what is this after all? What is this now? Who am I now? What? And we probe into that. We can speculate, we can intellectualize, we can rationalize, we can discuss, we can debate, but you can't know and you can't grasp, and there's nothing definitive to hold on or agree upon. Right? Today is Easter Sunday. Right? So for many people, Easter Sunday, that carries a message of something very specific, and there'll be a belief or a lens or a way to understand life in that way. If we get the same path of inquiry to look in at this light, at this mystery of life, and to naturally ask, sometimes we ask, what is this? Not all the time. In fact, most of the time not. Most of the time, we are busy participating in the unfolding. Right? But when you look for it, you can't find it. The darkness is dark, dark. He says that twice. This darkness is dark, dark, which in a sense is like, you can't find it. Just stop. Just, it's not like you can't find it, but you've got a little hint, and maybe if you look a bit more, no, there's no light at all. When you look, you can't find it. So then he says, so what is it, this light? What is this awareness? What is this light? And commonly when Unmon would ask these questions, his congregation, his group of practitioners would not answer. I guess that was the vibe at Unmon's place. It's not, it's maybe people didn't want to make a fool of themselves or risk anything, but often what happens is, after a pause, he answers himself. So in answering this question, what is your light? This mystery we can't find, right? Which you can't be grasped. I just spent 5 minutes deluding us all about that. Because Umon turns around and says, it's the kitchen pantry, the main gate. What is your light? The kitchen pantry and the main gate. 2 important places at a temple. He's given this talk at his monastery. The kitchen, very important to any community of people. I'm sure your kitchen is an important area of the house which you often visit, right? And even in a small place with just one person, the kitchen is an important room. And you need a gate. At the Zen Center, there's a main gate. And in a home, or in a condo, in a house, there's a front door. So we could say here, the kitchen and the front door. Where does life happen? What is this light? If we look in, we can only penetrate so far, and then it's dark. But if we look around at this world with this awareness, we see the world is alive and full in every direction. It's like, what is it that we're trying to grasp or find? It's everywhere you look. You're walking in it. We're talking in it, right? This is like the old thing about, like, it's a cartoon with the two goldfish in a bowl having an existential, inquiry into what life is. We're trying to understand water when you're just so immersed in something very clear that it just can't be seen. You just see the edges of the bowl. Right? So Umon says here, what is this light? It's the kitchen. And that's a dynamic place, the kitchen. That's where the action happens. That's where we prepare meals. That's where we clean up. It's often where we have conversation. And the main gate, this is where people come in and out. People leave. People arrive. Right? We do that many times a day, perhaps in our own homes, in and out of the door, in and out of the kitchen. Everyone has a light. When you look for it, you don't see it. What is your own light? The kitchen, the main gate. And then he adds, this is like the killer line here. It's better to have nothing than something good. Now, that seems right. That doesn't seem to make much sense. It's like, no, I'm not sure about that, Umon. I'd rather have some good things than nothing at all. But perhaps we can look at that with a different eye. With our eyes here, right? It's like, what is something good? Usually in a relative sense. Like, world life it's full of good and bad. Right? And as human beings, as the Buddha so kindly pointed out, we're attached to good things and we're averse to bad things. And so we have this preferential mind that is immersed in a relative experience in life, and we're always somewhere on that spectrum of attachment and aversion. And so if we glue, if we attach to things that we want, and that could be everything from we want things to turn out a certain way, we want certain results, political results to happen, we want certain financial things to fall into place, we want whatever it may be. We may desire these things, but as we know, life is unfolding in an unpredictable, unknowable, hugely complicated way, and little me here is not going to control that. And so we get a mixed helping of good and bad, right? Many things that are good and many things that are not so much. So what is it? If we have, better to have nothing than something good. If we have something good and it's based on something that we can see, hear, taste, touch, then unfortunately it is subject to the cosmic law of impermanence. Right? It's like Buddha Dharma 101, impermanence. If we've got something, well, it's going to expire in time. If we're holding on to something, then we need to maybe defend it or worry about it or protect it. Right? Now, of course, we're social animals, so of course we have all kinds of healthy attachments to family and friend and community, and there's a certain amount of suffering involved in just being connected to people, because we're empathetic and we care and we love. So we want to hold that, but there's difficulty in that. If we hold on to the good, and we've got something good, and then we're trying to avoid bad, then we suffer. We suffer. Umon says, better than that is to have nothing. But what is it in a Zen's, in a Zen sense? No, in a present, alive, awake reality, what have you got right now? What have we got? What have we really got? A relative way where we could say we break out the pen and paper and start jotting a few things down, what we've got, but we can look at it from a couple of different sides here. We've got everything. We've got the snow and the rain. We have the house and the pets and the family and friends. So we have our cushion. We've got a lot of things. In that sense, we can say that. But again, in the world of form, including this very body, we don't own them. They're just on kind of lease. They're coming and going. Now, if we have nothing, right, if we're established in that, it's like approaching meditation where I say, don't worry about becoming more enlightened or gaining any realization. Want for nothing and sit for no purpose beyond just sitting. And you want nothing. Have no wants. It's better to have nothing, not holding on to anything or desiring anything. Then you allow everything. That nothing appears as everything. When we strip out the conditional wanting and the preferential, the relative and the preferential, and let go of all of the things, then we're relying on nothing. But that nothing is very far from a dark void or any kind of nihilism. It's that wanting for nothing is experiencing everything. The whole world is here, as the kitchen, the main gate, the snow and the rain and the sky and the floor, and all of the people that we like and dislike, and all of the comings and going, and all of the hot mess of the human world. It's all here. It's our life in every direction. And it's where the practice really acts as is such a powerful support to a present, engaged, awake life, is to return to this time, is to turn to this place of allowing, experiencing, and dropping preference. That's when you let go of wanting something good and instead experience and allow everything to be as it is. Good and bad comes in a millisecond later as we bend it through the filter, categorize, pick, and prefer. But if we can really realize the other side of that coin, the principle that doesn't distinguish, that doesn't differentiate, well, wonderfully, we can still then continue to pick and choose and differentiate. But those choices can come from an awake and responsive approach rather than an asleep and reactive approach. You know, if we're consumed with our preference, the picking and choosing, the way that we understand the world, the way we've boxed it off and know what's going on, and we just have it all in the world of form, well, we're out of sync with the way things are. We're constantly disappointed by people and things. But if we can swallow, if we can really allow life, this coming and going, unfolding, it's happening, it's all happening, right? Whether we want to align with it or not. But to not align with it is to fall out of sync with life in an ever more divergent way. The heart of Zazen, the heart of Zen, is to come into alignment with this life as it is. And from that place of alignment, we can make wiser choices around preference, around so-called good and bad. You know, but understanding preference, good and bad, and all of these endless dualities with a different realizing that these things are not true, they're not divided, separate, and existent truth. I think I might have garbled that last sentence, but I'll open it up to any question or comment. I hope this is an interesting koan for you, this kind of exploration. I think it's a wonderful one. And like Unmon's, usually provocative, right? He's not just trying to get along or like to say something nice, like, you know, and put it on a card and sell it in Target for $7 with a nice quote on the front. It's like, but rather like his quotes are often provocative and make you really go, I'm not sure about that. But that's then an opportunity to really look into it for ourselves. Thank you for listening, and I'd love to hear if you have any question or comment, how this strikes you. So thank you to all of you. Thank you, Doug, for hosting and putting everything in the chat for us. Appreciate that. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. And gosh, I wish you all wellness. I wish you a good rest tonight. I hope you sleep.
Yeah.
Let's carry on unfolding.